The pre-flight checklist had become second nature after 12 years of flying, so automatic that my hands moved through the switches and dials while my mind wandered to the mundane details of my life. Rent due next week. Need to call Mom. Should probably text Jessica back, even though I knew that relationship was going nowhere. Captain Harrison, my first officer, Marcus Chen, interrupted my thoughts. We've got a passenger assistance request at the gate. Elderly gentleman having trouble boarding? Gate agent asked if you could help since the jet bridge is acting up again. I sighed, unbuckling from my seat. This wasn't technically my job. Flight attendants handled passenger assistance. But I'd learned years ago that a captain who helped passengers earned loyalty from both crew and customers. Besides, we were running early for once. I've got it. Keep working through the checklist. The jet bridge was indeed malfunctioning, its angle slightly off, creating a gap that would be treacherous for anyone with mobility issues. An elderly man stood at the gap, gripping his cane with white knuckles, clearly terrified of the space between solid ground and the aircraft. "Sir, I'm Captain Harrison. Let me help you across." I extended my arm, positioning myself to provide stability. He looked up at me, probably mid-80s, with that paper-thin skin that comes with age, liver spots across his hands, the slight tremor of Parkinson's or just very old age. But his eyes were still sharp, assessing. "Thank you, young lady. These old bones aren't what they used to be." I helped him across the gap, my hand firm on his elbow, moving slowly. He smelled of old-fashioned cologne and something medicinal. As we stepped into the aircraft, he stumbled slightly, and I caught him more firmly. "I've got you. Just a few more steps to your seat. Row 5C? Yes, thank you. In my day, we just climbed stairs to board planes. None of these fancy jet bridges that don't work properly." He chuckled, that dry laugh of old men who've seen everything. I helped him into his first-class seat, 5C aisle seat, exactly where older passengers preferred. As I stowed his cane in the overhead compartment and adjusted his seatbelt, he looked up at me with genuine gratitude. "You're very kind. What did you say your name was?" "Captain Emma Harrison. A woman pilot. How times have changed." He said it without malice, just observation. "I'm Theodore Walsh. Judge Theodore Walsh, retired." My blood turned to ice. Theodore Walsh. Judge Theodore Walsh. The name hit me like physical force. 15 years collapsed into nothing. Suddenly, I was 20 years old again, standing in a courtroom in Iowa, watching this man, younger then, still powerful, his voice booming with authority, declare me unfit to raise my 13-year-old sister. Miss Harrison displays a lifestyle that is fundamentally incompatible with providing a stable, moral environment for a minor child. While I sympathize with her desire to care for her sister following their parents' tragic death, I cannot in good conscience place a child in a home where she would be exposed to homosexual relationships and the inherent instability such arrangements create. My sister Lily, crying in the back of the courtroom, my aunt smirking in victory, my girlfriend at the time squeezing my hand so hard it hurt, and Judge Theodore Walsh, looking down at me from his bench with something that might have been pity but felt like contempt. "Captain, are you all right?" His voice brought me back. He was looking at me with concern. No recognition whatsoever in those sharp eyes. He didn't remember me. Of course he didn't. I had been one case among thousands. A 20-year-old girl fighting for her sister. Forgettable in the grand scheme of his career. "I'm fine. Just remembered something I need to check in the cockpit." My voice came out steady somehow. Professional. "Enjoy your flight, Mr. Walsh." Judge Walsh, actually. Though I suppose it doesn't matter anymore, being retired. He smiled, completely oblivious. "Thank you for your help, Captain." I walked back to the cockpit on autopilot, my mind screaming. The universe had to be playing some kind of sick joke. Of all the flights, all the passengers, all the days, Theodore Walsh was on my plane. "You look like you've seen a ghost," Marcus observed as I slid back into my seat. "Something like that." I forced my hands to steady as I resumed the checklist. Let's just get this flight done. But I couldn't focus. My mind kept circling back to that courtroom, to Lily's face as they led her away with our aunt, to the calls that became less frequent over the years as Aunt Patricia poisoned her against me, to the last time I'd seen my sister in person, 5 years ago, at a coffee shop in Des Moines, where she'd told me that maybe the judge had been right, maybe I wasn't fit to be her guardian, maybe it was better this way. "Emma," Marcus's voice was sharp. "You missed 2 call-outs. What's going on?" I shook myself. "Sorry. Personal stuff. I'm good now." "You sure? Because I can take this leg if you need me to." No, I'm fine. I straightened in my seat, forcing everything down deep where it belonged. 12 years of being a professional pilot had taught me how to compartmentalize. Personal life stayed on the ground. Up here, I was Captain Harrison, responsible for 189 souls. Nothing else mattered. We pushed back from the gate, taxied to the runway, completed our final checks. The familiar routine helped. The call and response with Marcus, the radio chatter, the satisfying roar of engines as we accelerated down the runway and lifted into the sky. But even as Chicago fell away beneath us, even as we climbed through scattered clouds into brilliant sunshine at 35,000 feet, I couldn't shake the image of Theodore Walsh sitting in 5C, the man who had taken everything from me, the man who had decided, with the stroke of a pen, that my love made me unfit. That who I was made me dangerous to a child who needed me. "We're going to hit some weather over the Rockies," Marcus noted, checking the display. "Nothing serious, but we should probably keep the seatbelt sign on longer than usual." Agreed. I adjusted our course slightly, my hands steady on the controls even as my mind raced. What was I supposed to do? Confront him? Tell him who I was and what he'd done? Make him understand the consequences of his decision? He was an old man now, frail and alone, traveling somewhere for reasons I didn't know. What would confrontation accomplish except making me feel slightly less powerless? But God, I wanted it. I wanted to march back there and make him remember, make him see what he'd done. Lily had never recovered from being taken away. She told me once, in a rare moment of honesty, that she'd felt abandoned by everyone, including me. Never mind that I'd fought with everything I had. Never mind the appeals we couldn't afford. Never mind that I'd called, written, tried to visit whenever Aunt Patricia allowed it, which wasn't often. The judge's words had destroyed my family, and he didn't even remember. 2 hours into the flight, one of the flight attendants, Sarah, young and efficient, knocked on the cockpit door. Standard procedure. We checked the camera, verified her identity, let her in. "Captain, just wanted to give you a heads up. The elderly gentleman in 5C isn't feeling well. Says he has some chest discomfort. I offered to call for a doctor, but he refused. Said it's just indigestion and he didn't want to make a fuss." My heart rate spiked. Chest discomfort. What kind of discomfort? "Tightness," he said, and some pain in his left arm. But he insists, "That's textbook cardiac symptoms." I was already unbuckling. "Marcus, you have the aircraft." "I have the aircraft." He shot me a concerned look. "Emma, are you sure? There might be a medical emergency. I'm checking it out." I followed Sarah back through the first-class cabin. Walsh was sitting with his eyes closed, one hand pressed to his chest, his breathing shallow. His face had gone gray. Judge Walsh. I knelt beside his seat, years of emergency training kicking in. "I need you to describe exactly what you're feeling." "It's nothing, just indigestion from lunch." I told the young lady, "I'm also a certified EMT." Describe the pain. Maybe it was the command in my voice, or maybe he was scared enough to listen, but he complied. "Tightness across my chest, pain down my left arm, feels like someone sitting on my chest, classic heart attack symptoms." "When did it start?" "About 20 minutes ago, but it's easing now." "That's not how heart attacks work." I turned to Sarah. "Get the AED and medical kit, now, and make an announcement asking for any doctors on board." To Walsh, I said, "We're going to give you aspirin and get you on oxygen, and we're diverting to the nearest airport. Denver's about 30 minutes away." "That's not necessary." "It absolutely is necessary. You're having a heart attack, Judge Walsh, and I'm not letting anyone die on my plane if I can help it. Even him. Even this man who had ruined my life, because that's what being a pilot meant. Everyone's safety came first, even your enemies." A doctor appeared, thankfully, Dr. Patel, a cardiologist heading to a conference in San Francisco. She took over the medical assessment while I coordinated with air traffic control for emergency priority landing in Denver. "United 447, we have a medical emergency on board. Request immediate clearance for Denver International." "United 447, roger. You're cleared direct to Denver. Descend and maintain flight level 250. Emergency equipment will be standing by." I returned to the cockpit, my hands steady on the controls as we began our descent. Marcus handled communications while I flew, the familiar rhythm keeping me grounded. "He going to make it?" Marcus asked quietly. "I don't know, doctor. Patel thinks it's a STEMI, serious heart attack. If we get him to a hospital quickly, maybe. You know him, don't you? That's why you went white when you saw him earlier." I kept my eyes on the instruments. "It's complicated." "Emma, after we land, Marcus. After we land." The descent into Denver was smooth despite my turbulent emotions. Emergency vehicles were waiting as we taxied to the gate. Paramedics boarded immediately, transferring Walsh to a gurney. Dr. Patel went with them, providing details. As they wheeled him past the cockpit, Walsh reached out weakly, catching my hand. His grip was surprisingly strong for a dying man. "Thank you, Captain. You saved my life." I looked down at him, this man who had destroyed mine, and felt nothing but a hollow ache where anger should have been. "Just doing my job, Judge." And did something flicker in his eyes? Some hint of recognition? But then the paramedics were moving again, and he was gone, and I was left standing in an aircraft that felt too small and too large all at once. We didn't make it to San Francisco that day. After Walsh was transported to the hospital, our flight was delayed for 3 hours, while they found a replacement aircraft, protocol after a medical emergency. I filed the necessary reports, coordinated with dispatch, and tried to ignore the way my hands shook every time I stopped moving. Marcus cornered me in the crew lounge while we waited. "All right, spill. Who is Theodore Walsh? And why did seeing him nearly make you lose it?" I stared at my coffee. Terrible airline coffee that tasted like burnt rubber, but at least it was hot. "He's the judge who ruled I was unfit to raise my sister after our parents died. Because I'm gay." Marcus went very still. "Jesus, Emma. 15 years ago. I was 20, she was 13. Our parents died in a car accident. I was in college, had a stable job, had support from friends, but my aunt filed for custody, and Judge Walsh agreed with her that a lesbian household was no place for a child." The words came out flat, emotionless. I'd told this story before, to therapists and girlfriends and close friends. It never got easier. "He took my sister away from me, and he didn't even remember who I was." "And you just saved his life." "Yeah." I laughed bitterly. Ironic, right? More like karmic, the universe giving you a choice. Marcus leaned forward. "Emma, what are you going to do?" "What can I do? He's in a hospital. I'm flying to San Francisco, eventually. Our lives intersected for 3 hours and now they won't again. But you want to do something." Of course I did. I wanted to storm into that hospital and make him apologize. Make him acknowledge the damage he'd caused. Make him understand that his moral concerns had destroyed a family that was already broken from grief. But more than that, and this was the part I hated admitting, I wanted to understand. Why had he ruled that way? What had he been thinking? Did he have any regrets now, 15 years later, in a world where same-sex marriage was legal and acceptance was growing? "I don't know what I want," I finally said. My phone rang. Dispatch, updating us on the replacement aircraft. We'd be wheels up in 30 minutes. But as I walked back toward the gate, my phone buzzed again. Unknown number, Denver area code. "Captain Harrison, this is Dr. Patel. We spoke on the plane?" "Yes, doctor. How's Judge Walsh?" "Stable. We got him into surgery quickly, angioplasty to clear the blockage. He's going to survive, thanks to your quick thinking." A pause. "He's been asking for you. Rather insistently, actually. Says he needs to speak with the pilot who saved him." My stomach twisted. "I'm about to board a flight." "I know. But Captain, he seems quite distressed about this. Kept saying Emma Harrison over and over. Does he know you from somewhere?" So he did remember. The recognition I'd seen in his eyes as they wheeled him away. It hadn't been my imagination. "It's complicated. Tell him I'll be back through Denver in 3 days. If he wants to talk, we can talk then. I'll let him know. 3 days. 3 days to decide what I wanted to say to the man who had taken everything from me." The flight to San Francisco was turbulent. Not weather, just me. I flew mechanically, responding to Marcus's callouts without really hearing them. My mind was already in that hospital room, already standing over Theodore Walsh's bed, already saying all the things I'd wanted to say for 15 years. That night, alone in my San Francisco hotel room, I did something I hadn't done in months. I called my sister. Lily didn't answer. She never did anymore. But I left a voicemail anyway. "Hey, Lily. It's Emma. I know you probably won't call back. You never do. But I needed to hear your voice. Something happened today. Something weird and complicated that made me think about when we were kids before everything fell apart." I paused, unsure how to continue. "I saw Judge Walsh today. The judge from the custody case. He was on my flight. Had a heart attack. I saved his life, which is ironic as hell considering he destroyed ours." My voice cracked. "I miss you, Lily. I miss my little sister who used to make me watch the same Disney movie 17 times in a row, who wanted to be a veterinarian and saved every wounded bird she found, Who used to climb into my bed during thunderstorms, because you said thunder was just the sky being angry. I don't know if you remember that girl. I barely do anymore. Aunt Patricia did a good job making you forget you ever loved me, but I remember. I remember everything. I wiped my eyes. Call me back, please, just this once. She wouldn't. She never did. But I had to try. The next 3 days crawled by. I flew my scheduled routes. San Francisco to Phoenix, Phoenix to Dallas, Dallas back to Chicago, going through the motions while my mind remained stuck in Denver. I researched Theodore Walsh online, learning things I hadn't known before. He'd been a circuit court judge in Iowa for 30 years, known for conservative rulings, particularly in family law cases. But after retirement, something had changed. 5 years ago, he'd written an op-ed in the Des Moines Register, recanting many of his earlier positions on LGBTQ rights, calling his previous rulings products of their time that he now recognized as harmful. We judges like to think we're dispensing justice impartially, he'd written, but we're humans, subject to the prejudices and limitations of our era. Looking back at some of my rulings, particularly those involving LGBTQ individuals seeking to adopt or retain custody of children, I'm ashamed. I let my personal beliefs override what should have been a pure evaluation of what was best for the child. I can't undo those rulings, but I can acknowledge my failures and hope that current judges learn from my mistakes. I read that paragraph 17 times, looking for any hint of insincerity, but it seemed genuine. An old man recognizing his wrongs, trying to make amends in the only way left to him. It didn't change what he'd done. Words couldn't undo 15 years of damage, but it was something. The night before I flew back to Denver, my phone rang. Lily. I almost dropped the phone in my shock. Lily? Hi, Emma. Her voice was older, wearier than I remembered. We were the same age our parents had been when they died. That realization hit me hard. You called back? Yeah, well, your voicemail was pretty heavy. A pause. Judge Walsh, huh? What are the odds? Astronomical. How are you? Don't. Her voice hardened. Don't do the small talk thing like we're strangers catching up. You want to talk about the judge? Let's talk about the judge. Okay. I sat on my hotel bed, gripping the phone. He's written articles recanting his old positions. Says he was wrong about LGBTQ parents. Too little, too late. Maybe. Probably. But Lily, he's dying. Heart attack, surgery. Who knows how much time he has left. And he wants to see me. Asked for me specifically. Why? What could he possibly say that would matter now? I don't know. But don't you want to know? Don't you ever wonder what he was thinking? Whether he ever considered the consequences of his rulings? Silence. Then, every day, Emma. Every single day I wonder what my life would have been like if that judge had let me stay with you. If I'd grown up in your apartment with your friends and your girlfriend instead of in Aunt Patricia's house, where being gay was a sin and difference was something to be cured. Lily, do you know what she did? Aunt Patricia? When I was 15 and told her I thought I might be gay too? Her voice cracked. She sent me to conversion therapy. 3 months of being told I was broken, diseased, wrong, that my feelings were lies from Satan, that if I just prayed hard enough I could be normal. Ice ran through my veins. She did what? Conversion therapy. It's legal in Iowa, or it was then. Legal to torture kids because of who they love. Lily laughed bitterly. So yeah, Emma. I wonder all the time what Judge Walsh was thinking when he sent a 13-year-old grieving girl to live with a religious fanatic instead of her loving sister. Lily, I didn't know. You never told me. How could I? Aunt Patricia monitored all my calls, read all my letters. By the time I was old enough to escape, the damage was done. I spent years convinced I was wrong, broken, evil. It took therapy and antidepressants and more pain than anyone should have to endure to realize I was none of those things. I'm so sorry. It's not your fault. It's his. Judge Theodore Walsh and his moral crusade against people like us. Another pause. So when you see him, Emma, when you walk into that hospital room, you remember what his ruling cost. Not just you losing me losing myself. I will. I promise. Good. She sighed. And Emma, for what it's worth, I don't blame you anymore. I did, for a long time. But my therapist helped me understand that you fought for me, that you tried, that the system failed us, not you. Tears streamed down my face. I fought so hard, Lily. I exhausted every appeal, every option. I sold everything I owned to pay lawyers. It wasn't enough. I know. Aunt Patricia told me you'd given up, that you didn't want the burden of raising me. But I found the court records when I turned 18. I saw everything you did, every motion you filed, Every hearing you attended, you didn't give up. The judge did. When can I see you? Really see you? Not just phone calls? I don't know. Soon, maybe. This conversation is already more than I've managed in years. Baby steps. Her voice softened. But Emma, go see Judge Walsh. Find out why he did what he did. Maybe it'll help both of us heal. Maybe. After we hung up, I sat in the dark for a long time, processing everything. Lily had been sent to conversion therapy. My baby sister, the one I'd promised to protect, had been tortured because Judge Walsh decided my love made me dangerous. The next morning, I flew to Denver with a clarity I hadn't felt in days. I knew exactly what I needed to say. Denver Presbyterian Hospital smelled like every hospital I'd ever been in. Antiseptic, desperation, and that peculiar blend of hope and resignation that permeates places where people fight for their lives. I still wore my uniform. I'd come straight from landing, and the nurses gave me respectful nods as I passed. Captain's stripes command respect everywhere. Theodore Walsh's room? I asked at the cardiac unit desk. Room 412. Are you family? No, but he asked to see me. I'm the pilot who diverted his flight when he had his heart attack. The nurse's expression softened. Oh, you're Captain Harrison. He's been asking about you constantly. Go ahead, but please don't upset him. His heart is still very fragile. Room 412 was at the end of the hall. Through the window, I could see Walsh propped up in bed, looking impossibly frail against the white sheets. Monitors beeped steadily, IVs dripped, all the machinery of modern medicine working to keep an old man alive a little longer. I almost turned around, almost walked away, but Lily's words echoed in my head. Find out why he did what he did. Maybe it'll help both of us heal. I knocked softly on the doorframe. Walsh's eyes opened, focusing on me with surprising sharpness for someone who'd nearly died 3 days ago. Captain Harrison, you came. His voice was weak but clear. You asked to see me. Judge Walsh. I stepped inside but stayed near the door, maintaining distance. Please sit. I know you don't want to. I can see it in your face, but please, sit. I took the chair farthest from his bed. We stared at each other for a long moment, years of pain and anger crackling in the air between us. You remember me, I said finally, when you recognized the name. Yes, Emma Harrison, 20 years old, fighting for custody of her sister Lillian, 15 years ago, Circuit Court of Iowa. He closed his eyes. I remember every case I regret. Yours is near the top of the list. Near the top? Not at the top. There were others. Other families I broke because I was more concerned with enforcing my narrow view of morality than with what was actually best for the children involved. He looked at me. But yours haunted me, because you were so young yourself, barely an adult, still grieving your parents, and I took your sister away because I couldn't see past my prejudice. Why? The word came out harsher than I intended. Why did you do it? You read the social worker reports. You saw that Lily thrived with me during the temporary custody period. You heard testimony from neighbors, teachers, everyone saying I was a good guardian. So why? Because I was a coward. His voice was bitter. Because it was 2010, and public opinion was shifting on gay rights, and I was terrified of being labeled too liberal by the conservative base that had elected me. Your aunt's lawyer argued that exposing a child to a homosexual lifestyle was inherently harmful, and I agreed. Not because the evidence supported it clearly didn't, but because it was the politically safe thing to do. Politically safe, I laughed without humor. My sister spent her teenage years in hell because you wanted to protect your political career. I know. There's no excuse, Emma. I can't undo what I did. I wrote that op-ed 5 years ago. Did you see it? I did. Then you know I came to regret my ruling. What you don't know is why. He shifted painfully in the bed. 7 years ago, my grandson came out as gay. Beautiful boy, 17 years old, terrified to tell us. And when he did, my daughter, his mother, reacted with love and acceptance. But my son-in-law, raised in a conservative household, reacted with anger, threatened to send the boy to conversion therapy. To fix him. My stomach clenched. Like what happened to Lily. What? My sister. Your ruling sent her to live with our aunt, who sent her to conversion therapy when she came out at 15. 3 months of being told she was broken and evil and wrong. The color drained from Walsh's already pale face. Oh, God. Emma, I never intended. You didn't intend to hurt anyone. You just wanted to keep your job. But intentions don't matter when a 13-year-old girl is being psychologically tortured because some judge decided her sister's love was dangerous. He was crying now, silent tears running down his weathered cheeks. "You're right. You're absolutely right. I destroyed your family to protect my career. And when I saw my own grandson facing similar treatment, I finally understood the consequences of my beliefs. I fought my daughter's husband, got my grandson into real therapy, not conversion torture, helped him understand he was perfect as he was. Good for him," I said coldly. "But that doesn't help Lily. She's 28 years old and still dealing with the trauma of what your ruling set in motion. I know, nothing I say or do can fix that. But Emma, please understand. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I'm asking for the chance to try to make amends in whatever small way I can." "How? You're retired. You can't reverse your old rulings. You can't give me back those 15 years with my sister." "No, but I can tell my story, Anne. I've been working with an LGBTQ advocacy group, writing amicus briefs for current cases, speaking to judicial conferences about the harm caused by letting personal bias override legal judgment." He gestured weakly to a folder on his bedside table. "That's my latest brief, supporting a transgender parent in a custody battle in Texas. The judge in that case cited some of my old rulings. I'm trying to get them overturned, to set precedent that will protect families like yours." I stared at the folder. "Why? Why now, after all this time?" "Because my grandson asked me to. When he came out, when I saw the fear in his eyes, he said, 'Grandpa, please don't be like you used to be. Please don't hate me for who I am.' And I realized that my past actions had hurt him too, made him fear that his own grandfather would reject him." Walsh's voice broke. "I can't change the past, but I can try to ensure fewer families are destroyed by judges like I was." We sat in silence. Outside, a code blue was called over the intercom. Life and death, playing out in these sterile hallways every day. "Lily wants to know why," I said finally. "She called me, first time in months, asked me to find out what you were thinking when you ruled against us. Tell her," he struggled to find words, "tell her that I was wrong, that I let fear and prejudice guide me instead of compassion and evidence, that I'm sorry, so deeply sorry, for the pain I caused, and that if I could go back, I would rule differently. I would give you your sister and give both of you the chance to heal together. That's not enough. I know. It will never be enough." He looked at me with those sharp eyes, now dulled by pain and medication. "But it's all I have. That and my work now to try to prevent other judges from making my mistakes." I stood, suddenly needing distance. "I saved your life. I did CPR, coordinated emergency landing, made sure you got to the hospital. Do you know why? Why? Because that's what captains do. We protect everyone on our aircraft, even our enemies, even the people who've hurt us most." I moved toward the door. "But don't mistake professional duty for forgiveness, Judge Walsh. You don't get absolution from me. I'm not asking for it. I just wanted you to know that I remember, that I regret, that I'm trying in my final years to undo some of the damage I caused." I paused at the door. "You have a grandson who's gay. What's his name?" "Michael. He's 24 now, studying environmental law at Berkeley. Then do me a favor. Next time you talk to Michael, tell him about Emma and Lily. Tell him about the family you destroyed. Make sure he knows the real-world consequences of judicial prejudice." "I will. I promise." I left without looking back, my hands shaking as I walked down the hospital corridor. I'd confronted my demon, heard his explanation and his regrets, and I felt empty, not vindicated, not satisfied, just hollow. In the parking lot, I sat in my rental car and called Lily. "Emma, is everything okay?" I saw him, Judge Walsh. We talked, and I told her everything. His grandson, his regrets, his current advocacy work, his tearful apology. When I finished, there was a long silence. "He's sorry," Lily said flatly. "The man who sent me to conversion therapy is sorry." "Yes, and that's supposed to make it better?" "No, but Lily, he's trying. He's using his remaining time to fight against the same kind of rulings he made against us. Maybe that counts for something." "Maybe," she sighed. "I don't know how to feel about this, Emma. Part of me wants to forgive him. Part of me wants him to suffer like I suffered. And part of me just wants to move on and stop letting that ruling define my entire life. You don't have to decide now, or ever. You're allowed to feel conflicted. Are you going to see him again?" "I don't know. Probably not. I said what I needed to say, heard what I needed to hear. I think that's enough." "Okay." A pause. "Emma, thank you. For going. For finding out. It doesn't fix everything, but it helps. Knowing that he regrets it, that he's trying to change things. Does it? Help, I mean? A little. Maybe." Her voice softened. Can we get coffee sometime? Actually see each other? I think I'm ready to try. Tears pricked my eyes. Yes. God, yes. Whenever you want. I'll fly to Iowa, or you can come to Chicago, or we can meet halfway. Chicago, next month. I have some vacation time. I'll clear my schedule. Whatever you need. After we hung up, I sat in the parking lot as the sun set over Denver, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. I'd come here looking for closure, for answers to questions that had haunted me for 15 years. I'd found something. Not forgiveness, not peace, but maybe understanding. Judge Theodore Walsh had been wrong. His ruling had shattered my family, but he was also human, flawed, influenced by his time and place, capable of growth and change. That didn't excuse what he'd done, but it meant he wasn't a monster, just a man who'd made terrible decisions and spent his remaining years trying to atone. I could live with that. Maybe. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. How did it go? I typed back. Complicated. Tell you when I get back. Another text came through, from a number I didn't recognize. When I opened it, I nearly dropped my phone. It was a photo of a young man, mid-20s, handsome, wearing a Berkeley sweatshirt. Below it, "This is Michael, my grandson. I told him about you and Lily. He wants me to give you his contact information, in case you'd ever want to talk. He says thank you for saving my life, even though I probably didn't deserve it. Theodore Walsh." Below that, Michael's email and phone number. I stared at the photo for a long time. This young man, raised by the same judge who'd destroyed my family, had grown up loved and accepted, because Walsh had learned from his mistakes, because one person's pain had prevented another's. It wasn't fair. It wasn't justice. But maybe it was something. I saved Michael's contact information. Someday, maybe, I'd reach out, tell him my story, learn his, find common ground in the wreckage Judge Walsh had left behind, and the changes he'd tried to make. But not today. Today, I drove back to the airport, returned my rental car, and caught my flight back to Chicago. Back to my life as Captain Emma Harrison, professional pilot, responsible for hundreds of lives every week, moving through the sky with confidence and skill. The girl who'd lost everything in a courtroom had become a woman who saved lives at 35,000 feet. Judge Theodore Walsh's ruling hadn't destroyed me, no matter how hard it had tried. I'd survived, thrived even, and now, finally, I had my sister back. That was enough. It had to be enough. The next month passed in a blur of routine flights and uncommon emotions. I threw myself into work, flying extra routes, volunteering for the less desirable red-eyes and early mornings, anything to avoid sitting still with my thoughts about Theodore Walsh and that hospital room conversation. Marcus noticed, of course. He always did. "You're running," he said bluntly one night over beers in the Chicago crew lounge. "From what? I'm not entirely sure, but you're definitely running." "I'm working. There's a difference. Emma, you've flown 6 consecutive 4-day trips. You're exhausted. You're going to make a mistake. I'm fine. You're not fine. You haven't been fine since Denver." He set down his beer. "Talk to me. Really talk to me." So I did. I told him about the conversation with Walsh, about his grandson Michael, about the hollow feeling that hadn't left me since, about how I'd expected confronting him to bring closure, but instead it had just opened more questions. "He's trying to make amends," I finished. "Writing briefs, speaking to judges, using his experience to prevent other families from being destroyed. And I don't know how to feel about that. Should I forgive him? Should I acknowledge his efforts? Or should I just hate him for what he did and ignore everything else?" You know there's no right answer to that, right? Marcus leaned back. Forgiveness isn't transactional. You don't owe it to him just because he's sorry, but you also don't have to carry hatred forever if it's weighing you down. Helpful. I said it sarcastically, but he was right. What does Lily think? She's conflicted too. We're meeting next week. First time in 5 years. I'm terrified. Of what? That too much time has passed. That we've become strangers. That whatever relationship we had as kids is gone forever. I finished my beer. Or worse, that she'll realize I'm not worth forgiving. That Aunt Patricia was right, and I really was unfit to raise her. Emma, that's bullshit and you know it. You were a kid yourself, doing your best in an impossible situation. The only people who failed Lily were the judge and your aunt. I know that intellectually, but my phone rang. Unknown number, Iowa area code. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Emma Harrison?" "Speaking. This is Patricia Morrison, your aunt." The world tilted. I hadn't heard Aunt Patricia's voice in a decade. How did you get this number? Lily gave it to me. She said you two are planning to meet. I wanted to talk to you first. I have nothing to say to you. Please, just listen. I owe you an apology. Her voice cracked. A massive, inadequate apology for what I did to you and your sister. I stood, walking away from Marcus toward a quieter corner. Go on. I was wrong. About everything. About you, about your lifestyle, about what was best for Lily. I took her from you because I genuinely believed that growing up with a lesbian sister would harm her, that I was saving her. She laughed bitterly. Instead, I nearly destroyed her. You sent her to conversion therapy. Yes, and it's the greatest regret of my life. Lily told me she talked to you about it, that you know what I did. Emma, I truly believed I was helping her, that she was confused and I could fix her. I didn't understand. She trailed off. I didn't understand anything. And by the time I realized how wrong I was, the damage was done. Why are you calling me now, after all these years? Because Lily's in therapy. Real therapy. With a good therapist who's helping her process the trauma I caused. And part of that process is me taking responsibility for my actions, acknowledging the harm I did, apologizing to the people I hurt. And you think a phone call makes up for 15 years of damage? No. God, no. Nothing can make up for what I did. But Emma, I need you to know that I'm sorry. That if I could go back and do things differently, I would. I would have supported your custody petition. I would have let you raise Lily. I would have loved you both instead of trying to change you. I felt tears on my face. You destroyed our family. Lily was just a kid. She needed love and stability, and instead you gave her judgment and torture. I know, and I'll carry that guilt for the rest of my life. A pause. Lily wants to see me. After she meets with you, she's planning to come here. To confront me, I suppose. To try to find some kind of healing. I wanted you to know that I'm not going to fight it. I'm going to listen. Take responsibility. Do whatever she needs me to do. Good. And Emma, I'm proud of you. What you've accomplished. Becoming a pilot. Saving lives. Never giving up on your sister even when she pushed you away. You became exactly the kind of person your parents raised you to be. I'm sorry I couldn't see that 15 years ago. After she hung up, I stood there for a long time, phone in hand, trying to process what had just happened. My aunt, the woman who'd taken Lily from me, had apologized, acknowledged her wrongs, taken responsibility. It didn't change the past. But maybe it meant the future could be different. Marcus found me. You okay? My aunt just apologized for the past 15 years. So no, I'm not okay. I'm completely overwhelmed. Want to get out of here? Walk around the city, clear your head? Yeah, that sounds good. We walked along the Chicago River, the city lights reflecting off the water, boats passing underneath bridges. It was a beautiful night, warm for October, clear skies, the kind of weather that made you glad to be alive. I keep thinking about what Judge Walsh said, I told Marcus, about how he's trying to make amends, and now my aunt's doing the same thing, and I don't know if I'm supposed to forgive them or stay angry or what. You're supposed to feel however you feel. There's no right way to process this, but what if I can't forgive them? What if holding on to anger is easier than letting it go? Then hold on to it. But Emma, ask yourself this. Is the anger serving you? Is it protecting you from something? Or is it just weighing you down? I didn't have an answer. The week before Lily was supposed to visit, I got another call. Dr. Patel, the cardiologist from the plane. Captain Harrison, I wanted to update you on Judge Walsh. He's been discharged from the hospital. Recovering well, all things considered. That's good to hear. There's something else. Before he left, he asked me to give you something. A letter. He said if you don't want to read it, that's fine. But he hoped you would. Can I email it to you? Yes, sure. The letter arrived 5 minutes later. I stared at it for an hour before finally opening it. Dear Emma, I've started this letter 17 times and deleted it 16. Words feel inadequate for what I need to say, but my doctor tells me I'm on borrowed time. This heart attack was serious, and the next one might not be survivable, so I need to say this while I still can. Thank you for saving my life, not just the medical intervention, though that was crucial, but for choosing to save me even though you had every reason to let me die. That kind of moral courage is rare, and I'm humbled by it. Since our conversation, I've been thinking a lot about redemption. Can a person who's caused irreparable harm ever truly be redeemed? I don't know, but I do know that trying to make amends, even inadequately, is better than giving up. I've attached my latest legal brief to this email. It's for a case in Texas. A lesbian mother fighting for custody of her biological children after a divorce. The father's attorney is citing several of my old rulings, arguing that LGBT parents are inherently unfit. I'm trying to get those rulings overturned, to testify if needed that I was wrong then and the law has evolved since. This won't undo what I did to you and Lily, but maybe it will prevent the next Emma and Lily from being separated. My grandson Michael has told me that you haven't reached out yet. He understands. You have no obligation to connect with my family, but if you ever change your mind, he'd welcome the opportunity to talk. He's become an advocate for LGBT youth, working with organizations that fight conversion therapy and support kids rejected by their families. Your story, he says, is part of what motivated him to do that work. Something good came from something terrible. That doesn't make the terrible thing less terrible, but maybe it means suffering doesn't have to be meaningless. I'm sorry, Emma, for everything, for taking your sister, for the years you lost, for the pain I caused. I'll be sorry until I draw my last breath. If there's an afterlife, I expect your parents will be waiting to tell me exactly what they think of my ruling. I'll deserve everything they say. Take care of yourself. Take care of Lily. And if you can find it in yourself to forgive me someday, know that I'll be grateful. But if you can't, I understand that too. With deep regret and deeper respect, Theodore Walsh. The attached brief was 47 pages long. I read every word. It was thorough, well-reasoned, and devastating in its critique of anti-LGBT custody rulings, including his own. He pulled no punches in describing how personal bias had overridden legal judgment, how children had been harmed by being separated from loving parents, how the law needed to evolve. It was good work, important work, the kind of thing that could actually make a difference. I forwarded it to Lily with a note. Judge Walsh's latest project. Thought you should see it. Her response came 30 minutes later. Holy shit. He's really trying, isn't he? Yeah, he really is. I don't know how to feel about this. Me neither. But Lily? I think we get to decide for ourselves. Whether to forgive him, whether to acknowledge his efforts, whether to move on. There's no right answer. When I see you next week, can we talk about it? Really talk? Of course. About Walsh, about Aunt Patricia, about everything. We have 15 years to catch up on. I'm scared, Emma. Me too. But maybe that's okay. Maybe being scared means this matters. Maybe. The day Lily arrived in Chicago, I was a nervous wreck. I'd cleaned my apartment 3 times, changed outfits 4 times, and been completely useless at work. Marcus had sent me home early with orders to stop being weird and just be yourself. Easy for him to say. I waited at the coffee shop where we'd agreed to meet, a quiet place in Lincoln Park, far enough from my neighborhood that we wouldn't run into anyone I knew. I got there 30 minutes early and drank 2 lattes before she arrived. And then she was there, walking through the door, looking so much like our mother it hurt. 28 years old, blonde hair cut short, nervous eyes scanning the room until they landed on me. Emma, Lily. We stood there awkwardly for a moment. Then she crossed the distance and hugged me, and suddenly we were both crying in the middle of a coffee shop, while other patrons pretended not to stare. I'm sorry, she said into my shoulder. I'm so sorry for pushing you away, for believing Aunt Patricia's lies, for wasting so much time. Shh, it's okay. We're here now. That's what matters. We talked for 5 hours, about everything. Her childhood with Aunt Patricia, my struggle to build a life after losing her, the conversion therapy, my career, her journey to accepting herself, the years of pain and anger and slowly learning to heal. I'm gay, she told me. Or maybe bi, still figuring it out, but definitely not straight. Does Aunt Patricia know? Yeah, that's why she's been in therapy too, trying to understand why she reacted so badly, why she thought torturing me was love. Lily stirred her cold coffee. She's not a monster, Emma. She was raised in this environment where being different was wrong, and she genuinely thought she was saving me. That doesn't excuse what she did. No, but understanding it helps me heal. Carrying all that anger was exhausting. Judge Walsh said something similar, about trying to make amends, even though nothing can truly fix what he did. Do you think he means it? Or is it just an old man trying to feel better about himself before he dies? I thought about the legal brief, the work with advocacy groups, his grandson Michael dedicating his life to helping LGBT youth. I think he means it. I think he's genuinely trying to undo some of the harm he caused. Whether that's enough, I shrugged. That's up to us to decide. Have you decided? Not yet. But I'm thinking about reaching out to Michael, Walsh's grandson. He's doing advocacy work against conversion therapy. Maybe our stories could help. I'd like that. Turning our pain into something useful. Making sure other kids don't go through what we did. We talked until the coffee shop closed, then walked along the lake for another hour. Somewhere during that walk, something shifted. We stopped being two strangers connected by shared DNA and became sisters again. Real sisters, who knew each other's scars and loved each other anyway. Stay, I said when we reached my apartment building. I have a guest room. Stay for the week. Let's actually spend time together. Okay, she smiled. A real smile, like the ones I remembered from when she was little. I'd like that. That week was a gift. We cooked together, watched stupid movies, stayed up late talking about everything and nothing. I taught her the basics of flight physics, and she showed me her photography portfolio. Stunning black and white images that captured loneliness and hope in equal measure. These are incredible, I told her, scrolling through her website. They're therapy. My therapist suggested art as a way to process trauma. Photography stuck. She pointed to one image, a broken window with light streaming through. That's how I felt for years. Broken but still capable of beauty. And now? Now I'm learning that being broken doesn't mean being ruined. That cracks let the light in. On her last night, we sat on my balcony watching the city lights. I reached out to Michael, I told her. Walsh's grandson. We're having coffee next week. How do you feel about that? Nervous, hopeful. Like maybe something good can come from all this pain after all. I looked at her. Want to come with me? Meet him together? Yeah, I think I do. Michael Walsh turned out to be exactly what I'd hoped. Genuine, compassionate, deeply committed to making sure his grandfather's mistakes led to positive change. We met at the same coffee shop where Lily and I had reunited, and within minutes it felt like we'd known each other for years. My grandfather talks about you constantly, Michael said. About how you saved his life even though he didn't deserve it. How that act of grace changed his perspective on everything. I didn't do it for him. I did it because it's my job. I know. That's what makes it meaningful. He pulled out his phone, showing us photos. This is the youth center I help run. LGBT kids who've been rejected by their families, sent to conversion therapy, kicked out of their homes. We provide housing, therapy, legal advocacy, whatever they need. The photos showed teenagers, some smiling, some still wearing the haunted look I recognized from Lily's old pictures. Kids who'd survived and were learning to thrive. Your grandfather's legal work, Lily said. Is it actually making a difference? Yes. 3 states have cited his briefs in overturning discriminatory custody rulings. 2 judges have publicly acknowledged that they were influenced by his evolution and changed their own thinking. Michael's voice was passionate. He can't undo the past, but he's damn sure trying to change the future. We talked for hours about advocacy work, about turning pain into purpose, about how to forgive without forgetting. By the end, we'd exchanged numbers and made plans to collaborate. Lily would contribute photography to the youth center's awareness campaign. I'd speak at fundraising events. Michael would connect us with other families affected by discriminatory rulings. Something good from something terrible. Maybe that was the best kind of redemption available. 6 months later, I stood in a courtroom in Texas, watching a judge rule in favor of Maria Santos, a lesbian mother fighting for custody of her 3 children. The father's attorney had cited several precedents, including Judge Theodore Walsh's old rulings, to argue that LGBT parents were inherently unfit. But Walsh's amicus brief, along with testimony from child psychologists and current legal standards, had convinced the judge otherwise. The law has evolved, Judge Patricia Morales declared, and so must our understanding of what constitutes a fit parent. Mrs. Santos has demonstrated nothing but love, stability, and devotion to her children. Her sexual orientation is irrelevant to her parenting capacity. Custody is awarded to the mother. Maria Santos collapsed in tears. Her children, 7, 9, and 12, ran to hug her. And I thought about another courtroom, 15 years ago, where a different judge made a different ruling that destroyed a different family. But this time, the story had a different ending. Outside the courthouse, Michael Walsh waited with his video crew, documenting cases like this for the advocacy organization's records. Lily was there too, camera in hand, capturing the moment Maria Santos walked out of the courthouse with her children. Another family saved, Michael said quietly, because an old judge finally learned to do better. Theodore Walsh had died 2 months ago. Another heart attack, this one fatal, but his final years of advocacy work lived on. The briefs he'd written, the testimony he'd given, the judges he'd influenced, all of it continuing to protect families like mine. I'd visited him once more before he died. He'd been in hospice, barely conscious, but he'd recognized me. "Emma, you came. I came. Did the Texas ruling? Did we win? Not yet, but it's looking good. Your brief is strong." He'd smiled. "Good. That's good." His hand found mine, grip weak. "Thank you for saving my life, for giving me time to try to make amends." "Did you? Make amends?" "No. Some things can't be amended. But I tried, and maybe that counts for something. Maybe it does." He'd died 2 days later. Michael called to tell me. I'd felt complicated, sad for a life that had included so much harm but ended trying to heal, relieved that his suffering was over, grateful that his final years had produced work that would outlive him. The funeral was small. Michael, his mother, a handful of legal colleagues, and surprisingly, Lily and me. We'd debated going, but ultimately decided we needed to be there, for closure, for acknowledgement, for the complicated truth that humans are capable of both terrible harm and genuine growth. At the funeral, Michael shared his grandfather's final letter, written to be read after his death. It was an apology to everyone he'd harmed through his rulings, a plea for current judges to learn from his mistakes, and a request that his estate fund a legal advocacy organization focused on protecting LGBT families in custody disputes. "He can't undo the past," Michael read, his voice breaking, "but maybe he can help build a better future. I ask that those I've harmed consider this my final attempt at redemption, not because I deserve forgiveness, but because families deserve protection." Lily squeezed my hand as we listened. We'd talked extensively about whether to forgive Judge Walsh. In the end, we decided it didn't matter. Forgiveness was a gift we could give ourselves, not him. We could acknowledge his evolution, benefit from his advocacy work, and still carry the scars of what he'd done. "I don't forgive him," Lily had told me, "but I'm not angry anymore." Is that the same thing? I don't think so, but maybe it's close enough. Now, standing outside the Texas courthouse watching Maria Santos hug her children, I thought about the strange journey that had brought us here. A random flight, a medical emergency, a confrontation in a hospital room, and ultimately, a collaboration between people who should have been enemies, united in trying to prevent future harm. My phone rang. Aunt Patricia. We talked occasionally now, stilted conversations where we tried to rebuild something from the ruins of our relationship. I wasn't ready to call her family again. Maybe I never would be, but I could acknowledge her efforts to change, just as I'd acknowledged Judge Walsh's. "Emma, I just saw the ruling from Texas. That case you were following. You won. We won. Maria Santos won. Her kids won. Judge Walsh would have been proud that his work helped." "Yeah, he would have been." A pause. "How are you doing, Patricia?" "Better. Therapy helps. So does knowing that Lily and I are slowly rebuilding. And you, Emma, I know I've said this before, but I'm proud of you. What you've become despite everything I did to stop you. Thanks. Are you and Lily still planning to come for Thanksgiving? I know it's asking a lot. We'll be there. We talked about it. Time to start building new traditions. Better ones." After hanging up, I joined Lily and Michael. We'd become an unlikely team. The pilot, the photographer, and the lawyer's grandson. 3 people connected by one old judge's mistake and his attempt to correct it. "Coffee?" Michael suggested. "We should celebrate and plan the next steps. There are 17 more cases pending that could use our support." "I can't," I said reluctantly. "I have a flight to catch. Seattle in 3 hours. Always flying somewhere." Lily smiled. "Must be nice, living above all the mess down here." "It is. But it's also good to land sometimes, to be part of making things better." I hugged them both, promised to be available for the next case, and headed to the airport. As I drove, I thought about trajectories, how lives follow unexpected paths, how a terrible ruling 15 years ago had led to this moment, how losing my sister had eventually meant finding her again, stronger and more connected than we'd been before. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Heard about the Texas ruling. "Congratulations. Buy you a beer when you land? Deal. And Marcus? Thank you. For everything. That's what co-pilots are for. Well, that and making sure you don't crash the plane. Keeping me grounded, you mean? Literally and metaphorically, Captain." At the airport, going through security, I pulled out my ID and pilot's license. Captain Emma Harrison. It had taken years to earn those stripes. Years of training, studying, flying, proving myself, building a life from the wreckage of that courtroom ruling. Judge Walsh hadn't destroyed me. Neither had Aunt Patricia. They'd tried in their own misguided ways. But I'd survived. More than survived. I'd thrived. And now I was using my story to help others do the same. That was enough. More than enough. As I walked through the terminal toward my gate, I passed a family. 2 women with a toddler. Clearly a couple. Clearly loving parents. The child was laughing, running ahead while both mothers called her back. Normal family chaos. Beautiful in its mundanity. 10 years ago, Judge Walsh would have ruled those women unfit parents. Today, because of his evolution and the advocacy work he'd supported, they were protected. Their family was secure. I smiled at them as I passed. They smiled back, not knowing that people like me had fought for people like them. That's how it should be. The work happening quietly, protecting families so they could just live their lives without fear. My gate was crowded. Delayed flight ahead of mine. Passengers milling around looking frustrated. I found a quiet corner, pulled out my phone, and looked at the photo Michael had sent me last week. Judge Theodore Walsh, probably 60 years old, standing in his courtroom in full robes, looking stern and self-righteous, and absolutely certain of his moral authority. I compared it to the last photo I'd seen of him, frail in his hospice bed, but eyes still sharp, still aware. A man who'd learned, too late, that certainty was dangerous, that humility was strength, that admitting you were wrong was the bravest thing you could do. Flight 847 to Seattle, now boarding all zones. I stood, grabbed my bag and headed for the jet bridge. Another flight, another crew, another opportunity to keep people safe as they traveled between their lives. Captain Emma Harrison, lesbian, sister, advocate, pilot. The girl that Judge Theodore Walsh had ruled unfit had become a woman who saved lives and protected families, not despite his ruling, but because of it. Because sometimes the worst things that happen to us forge us into something stronger. I didn't forgive Judge Walsh, but I understood him, and I was grateful for his evolution, even if it came too late to save my family, because his evolution helped save others. And that, in the end, was a kind of redemption. As I settled into the captain's seat, running through pre-flight checks with a new first officer I'd just met, I thought about the strange interconnectedness of lives, how a random boarding assistance request had led to confrontation, understanding, and ultimately collaboration, how enemies could become complicated allies, how the past could inform the future without defining it. "Ready for departure?" the first officer asked. "Ready," I confirmed. We pushed back from the gate, taxied to the runway, and climbed into the sky above Texas. Below us, Maria Santos was probably celebrating with her children. Michael was planning his next advocacy campaign. Lily was editing photos that would help tell our story. And somewhere, somehow, I hoped Judge Theodore Walsh knew that his final years had mattered, that his attempt at redemption, however imperfect, had helped protect families like the one he'd broken. It wasn't forgiveness, but maybe it was peace. And at 35,000 feet, flying through clear skies toward another destination, another group of passengers trusting me with their lives, that felt like enough.